The purpose of this video is to teach you the basics of hand sewing. The first thing that you need to decide is the color of your thread. Preferably you choose the color of your thread that would match whatever fabric you're working on so that it won't be seen, and it helps if you make mistakes, they won't be very visible, which is great. Most people will choose all-purpose thread for whatever project they're working on. I've chosen button thread, which you guys can see is a little thicker, but I chose that so you guys could see that in the video. Next, I need to decide on length. If you get your thread too short, you have to rethread often, but if you get it too long, it can tangle easily. So I found a good medium for me is going about an arm's width away, and I'll cut that off right there. That gives me plenty of thread to work with. Now I'm going to take my needle and hold close to the eye of the needle, which is the opening at the top, and close to the end of my thread, and I'm going to put the thread through the eye of the needle. I like to do it to tie off in a certain way. There are multiple ways to do it, but this is my preference. So once I've done that, I'm going to take both of my tails, or the ends of my thread, and I'm going to match them up together. So at the very bottom, my needle dangles down here. The reason I like to do that is now I am working with two threads rather than one. It's going to be a stronger hold. If you're doing something really dainty and that needs to be hidden, potentially you'd want to do this with one thread. But I like things that hold and are strong, especially when I'm mending stuff. To tie off, what I'm going to do is make a loop around my fingers until I see an X. There's my X. I will pinch my X like this, and then take my tails and wrap them behind around the X, and then pull. This is the same technique that you would use if you were tying a balloon. Unfortunately, you probably do need to do this twice, so it's harder on the second time, but I'm going to wrap my finger around to make a loop. Here's my, oops, let me try that one more time to show you. Here's my loop. There's my X right there. And take my tails and go through the X and pull, and I'm trying to put my knots together. So now it's really nice and strong. Another thing you could do once you've got your first knot is to pry open the two tails and to tie them like you would a pair of tennis shoes. You just open them up and tie them. All of these things are going to take time and practice. If you suck at them at first, that's fine. Oftentimes this is your first time doing it. It's okay to suck at something when you're starting. Next, I'd like to talk to you about how to hold your fabric. So I'm going to be working with felt for this project, and I like felt because it doesn't fray. It's kind of nice. You'll notice that if I try to just stab or make a stitch anywhere, it's kind of loose. So what I like to do is I like to hold my fabric this way. So I've got my middle finger and my ring finger together, and I've got my, not my ring finger, I've got my middle finger and pointer finger together, and my ring finger and my thumb together. So now this area right here is really taut and tight, where this isn't. So that means when I go to actually stitch it, it will hold tight and will produce nicer stitches. The other thing to think about is the right versus wrong side. Whenever we hand stitch, we want to make sure that we are stitching and tying off on the wrong side. So this fabric really doesn't have a right or wrong side, but if I was working on something like this, it's pretty obvious which side is the right and the wrong side. I would want to make sure my knots are both on the wrong side, leaving the right side nice and clean, because that's what people are going to see. So I'm going to show you real quick how to tie off. So once I've got a few stitches, like this, boom, boom. Here's my right side of the fabric. You can only see my stitches. And if I was using white thread, you might not be able to see that at all. On my wrong side, you can see my knot and a stitch. So what I'm going to do to tie off, it's really lovely and simple. I'm going to take my needle, go underneath the last stitch that I made, pull until there's a loop. I'm going to tilt my camera down so you guys can see this. So pull until you see a loop, just like that. There's my loop. Then I'm going to take my needle and go through the back side of the loop and pull. Boom, just like that. You want to do it a second time with in that same spot. So pull until you see a loop, just like that. Then take your needle and go through the back side of that loop and pull tight. And then you are ready to trim and make everything look neat. Good job.